This podcast is made possible by listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's July 16th, 2025. On this day in 1862, East Tennessee native David Farragut was made the first Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy. And yes, for those good with your dates, you are correct in clocking that the Civil War was underway. That war is the reason the Navy was finally big enough to need a rank that high. And yes, the man to first be given that responsibility was from a state that had seceded, a landlocked state, no less. Farragut was born in Knoxville. He lived there for about 5 years, but then his dad joined the Navy. The family moved to New Orleans, and after just a couple of years, his mother died from a disease that periodically ravaged that city, yellow fever. Farragut ended up joining the Navy himself as a midshipman when he was just 9 years old, seemingly so he could stay in the care of a family friend who commanded a ship. He had his first experience of battle at 11. And at 12, when his ship sailed the Pacific and captured a number of opponents, Farragut was put in command of one of them. Again, he was 12. So by the time the Civil War began, Farragut had spent decades on the water. The U.S. Navy itself was his home. Tennessee was surely just the most vague of memories for him. During the course of the war, he went on from being the first ever Rear Admiral to becoming the first Vice Admiral and even the Navy's first full admiral. And along the way, in an epic battle for control of Mobile Bay, he uttered a phrase you probably heard in any number of other contexts. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. David Farragut's trajectory in the Navy makes a lot more sense once you hear about that move from Knoxville to New Orleans, right? But Tennessee does have much closer ties to that branch of the service than our geography might suggest. And some of that dates back to the Civil War era, too. A lot of the naval battles during that war happened on the nation's rivers. Part of the fighting at Shiloh, down in Savannah, Tennessee, involved Union gunboats on the Tennessee River firing at Confederate units on the ground. And controlling the Mississippi River became a major concern to both sides. That river is still a pretty important site for the Navy. Just north of Memphis, in Millington, Tennessee, there's a vital base called Naval Support Activity Mid-South. It's not a huge shipyard full of aircraft carriers and destroyers, but it has a major hand in matters related to the people on those massive ships. That's the facility where the Navy's HR department works. Personnel Command is there. Recruiting Command works out of Millington. And there's a quite visible reminder of the Navy's presence in Nashville over by Shelby Park. That structure that looks like a ship headed for the Cumberland River used to house a training center for the Naval Reserves. Now, the military hasn't used the building in a long time, but the Naval Reserves didn't leave the area. Now they're located down in Smyrna, using space in the old Air Force base there, alongside Reserve and National Guard units from other branches of the military. And in fact, one of the most significant naval officers of our lifetime grew up here in Nashville. Joseph Wilson Preer was an admiral and chief of U.S. Pacific Command. He earned a host of honors from our military, but also formal recognition from other nations around the Pacific: Japan, Korea, Australia, the Philippines, and more. After retiring from the Navy, he was the U.S. ambassador to China for several years. Now, back around the time that he finished his service as ambassador, I got to know his mom, Jean Preer. She was the quintessential old Nashville kind of woman. She was a great advocate for Middle Tennessee's Girl Scouts. But maybe more than anything, she was a Navy woman. You know, her husband had served in the Navy and died in World War II, and then her son, of course, went on to such extensive service. And every October, on the Sunday closest to the anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Navy, Miss Jean Preer would make sure the Navy hymn was sung at downtown Presbyterian Church. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea. And when that anniversary comes around this October, it will be the Navy's 250th birthday. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What Where Wednesday is coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Smyrna police have arrested an armed suspect following an hours-long standoff at a liquor store. Law enforcement arrived at the scene yesterday afternoon following reports of an active shooter. The suspect, whose identity has not been released, initially barricaded himself inside the store before eventually surrendering to police. Although the suspect allegedly fired several shots, breaking a window and several bottles, no injuries have been reported. After the arrest, police discovered multiple emptied propane tanks inside the store and called Smyrna Fire to the scene. All road closures in the area have been lifted, but there will be an increased police presence as the investigation continues. Tennessee has higher gun death and gun suicide rates than the national average. WPLN's criminal justice reporter Paige Flager says recently released data illuminates the state's gun violence crisis and who is most impacted.
Tennessee's gun death rate outpaces almost every other state in the country except 5 others, most of which are also in the South. Johns Hopkins released a report with data from 2023, the most recent year on record. The gun death rate combines gun homicides with gun suicides. The majority of people who died by suicide in Tennessee used a firearm. Firearm suicides are especially prevalent in rural areas where there's limited access to mental health services and high rates of alcohol use and gun ownership. A separate report from the Violence Policy Center found a growing group impacted by guns in Tennessee are Hispanic people, with the state coming in with the 5th highest gun death rate for Hispanic people in the country. Paige Flager, WPLN News.
A Nashville judge has ruled that the man accused of fatally shooting a Belmont University freshman is competent to stand trial. Prior to the death of 18-year-old Jillian Ludwig, Shaquille Taylor had been found incompetent to stand trial for a gun-related charge. But he was released because he didn't meet the state's threshold for involuntary commitment. Ludwig was killed by a stray bullet while walking through a park in 2023. While the judge acknowledged that Taylor has an intellectual disability, he ruled that the 30-year-old is competent to stand trial because he could recall details of the shooting. Taylor's attorneys can submit accommodations for the court to consider using during trial. Nashville's main library branch is still slotted to reopen at the end of the month. It's been closed since mid-June after the parking garage that serves the library caught fire, destroying 2 floors of parking and burning multiple cars. WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams reports the library board gave an update Tuesday on the status of the library and the fluidity of the reopening.
The blaze wasn't in the library. It was in the adjacent garage. However, parts of the library were damaged, mainly the auditorium and conference center. At the board meeting this week, Library Director Terry Luke said the branch intends to open on July 29th, but described the date as fluid.
And we continue to meet with our experts to make sure that we are ready to open, because we do not want to go into that building and then say, oh, by the way, now we have to shut down for another 2 weeks.
The 150-person team cleaning up the library is led by Bob Zayats. He told the board that what could hold up opening is not contamination or air quality or safety. The library is structurally sound. Rather, it's planning the repairs that could be an issue.
I'm sure you can imagine if you guys chose to remodel your entire auditorium or conference center, you'd probably spend 6 months to a year planning it.
Still, the library is targeting July 29th. Everything except the auditorium, conference room, and, of course, the garage is expected to open. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
Williamson Health is considering a sale to ensure the community-owned facility will remain open. The 67-year-old nonprofit health system in Franklin is hoping to remain independent, even if it finds a buyer. The Nashville Business Journal reports Williamson Health wants to sell because it's facing the kinds of strains common for smaller hospitals: workforce shortages, low payment rates for insurance companies, changes in Medicaid and Medicare, and changes in the regulatory landscape, just to name a few. A board subcommittee for the hospital found that the company's current finances are strong, but money is expected to get tight over the next few years, so much so that it would challenge the facility's ability to stay open. Although it can be difficult to think about, most of us will likely rely on hospice care for the passing of a loved one. Since the 1980s, Medicare has fully covered hospice care. However, Meredith Portwood with Heart and Soul Hospice told our Daily Show This Is Nashville that many families are surprised to learn what hospice provides and what it doesn't.
I think a lot of families don't realize, we're not there 24/7, and sometimes you do have to supplement, and that's where our social worker gets involved to get the family the help they need in the home.
Bree Clark, an end-of-life doula, says families may want to reach out to a doula for additional support through a death.
A lot of people, they just need help project managing the situation. Grief and logic don't get along, and a doula can help people navigate just something that's very terribly stressful.
You can hear the full conversation about hospice care on yesterday's This Is Nashville episode, available in the This Is Nashville podcast feed. One of the lakes at Montgomery Bell State Park will be drawn down as part of a habitat restoration plan. Work begins next week to remove all the water from Lake Woodhaven. The project is expected to last a year. Visitors won't have access to the lake, but they should expect to see a lot of mud in the area and a stream-like environment. Nearby facilities will remain open. In the long run, officials want to create a better fishing habitat and improve water quality. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Every summer, one Nashville nonprofit throws a different kind of street party. And Marquise is here to tell us all about it.
Diet Dr. Pepper, Raymond Carver.
I'm Marquise Munson, here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What Where Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Live music opportunities start tonight with the Budos Band at the Basement East. Tomorrow night, Backyard Sessions, curated by WNXP, is back at the Bobby Hotel Rooftop Lounge with Josh Gilligan and Samia.
Dollars red in the litmus. I felt the pecan. I eat it.
Also on Thursday at the Blue Room, Deep Sea Diver performs. Friday night, The Head and the Heart are at Ascend Amphitheater, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs start their two-night residency at the Ryman. On Saturday, Zach Farrow at the Blue Room and Nashville Punk Rock Flea Market kicks off their two-day event at Eastside Bowl. Back at Ascend on Sunday are Goo Goo Dolls and Dashboard Confessional. Wrapping up this week's listings on Tuesday is Coldplay at Nissan Stadium. And for more events, head over to WNXP.org/events.
I tell you, I just discovered this show is over. There's not a single doubt it's you again.
This week for What Where Wednesday, we feature Walk Bike Nashville's Open Streets Summer Series happening this Sunday from noon until 5 p.m. The local nonprofit has been around for over 25 years, dedicated to making Nashville more walkable, bikeable, and livable for everybody. Meredith Montgomery, executive director of Walk Bike Nashville, says they want people to be able to get wherever they need using whatever mode of transportation they want to use. And behind the scenes, the organization is doing a lot of grassroots work with the neighborhoods to inform and educate people so they can help shape their streets into great spaces.
Nashville, we've made strides, but we have so much more work to do on this multimodal network that we need. So I think we're in a really good place, and Nashville, with regards to transportation, is actually in the best place that it's ever been as far as like the path that we are on. There's two issues we're trying to conquer. It's the infrastructure, so it's the built environment. It's needing those mobility lanes. It's needing the bus service, but it's also the culture. And so we see people moving here, especially downtown with some of these big companies, and they're used to getting around on bus, and it's currently not easy to do. And so we are trying to shift the way that people think about their built environments and their streets and how they get around their cities. But Open Streets is a great way to do that. It just opens people's eyes to how our streets can be for more than just moving cars from point A to point B.
Kayla Gibson, and I'm Open Streets coordinator. So Open Streets Nashville is essentially when we close certain streets to cars, discourage car use, to encourage Nashvillians to come out and use the streets for all that they can be used for, which is both encouraging more walking and biking, maybe learning more about how to get around the city, but also just using the street as the public space that it already is. That essentially is the mission we're going for, is showing people all the ways that streets can be used. And open streets have been happening in Nashville for 10 years now. The first open street was over in the Gulch at the 12 South area. And historically, they've been once a year, about a mile, maybe a bit more, just for one day, typically Sundays. So this year, by doing 3 in the summer, 5-mile loop downtown, it has obviously grown exponentially. They've also been typically in residential areas. So doing it downtown, our idea was, how can we set it up in a way that everyone in Nashville can kind of just hop on from wherever they are? Part of our route goes by the farmers market. So if you're able to access any bus lanes, bike lanes in the northern area of Nashville, you can kind of just get yourself onto the Greenway and be on the open street and things like that.
To kind of piggyback on what Kayla said, in addition to the whole route, if you are a runner or if you've got a bike or you check out a B-cycle, doing this whole route is incredible, and it demonstrates what a connected network is like. You know, we don't have 5 miles of connected safe streets and greenways that we can easily get on our bike. And so this is a short or an easy way to experience that. And then if you're not, you're on foot, maybe you're bringing your dog or you're bringing your kids and they're on a Strider bike or they're in a stroller. There's several segments that you could do. I recommend if you start at the farmer's market and you want a really short route, you can walk through the Greenway over to the Sound Stadium, check that out, and there's some cool businesses over there. If you've got a kid on a Strider bike and are newly riding a bike and needs some free road, you can go from the farmer's market in the other direction down to Frankie Pierce Park. Frankie Pierce Park is going to be the starting location for, there's a bike group, the Critical Mass crew is going to start a group ride at 1 o'clock from there. And then down on First, there's all kinds of riverfront or activations on Riverfront Park. There's going to be a big chess set, you get free yoga, all kinds of stuff to enjoy. We've got more details on that on our website.
The series will continue August 17th and September 7th. For more information about Walk Bike Nashville's Open Street Series and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesday.
You built a house, and it's as empty as you feel now.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.